What's that? No, I'm not actually. I just like
Anyone get
so
this?
into it. Yeah.
Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. I'm going to take off my mask just for my portion of this presentation, just to make sure that you guys can hear me. Thank you all for coming. I'm Melissa. I'm one of the clinical resource therapists with the BCH Long-Term Care and Assisted Living Professional Practice team.
And I'm Jill. I'm also an OT clinical resource therapist with the BCH Long-Term Care and Assisted Living Professional Practice team. Thanks for coming.
So, I want to say thank you to you all for coming, but also thank you to the vendors for coming. This is awesome. I also want to let you know that we are on YouTube Live. So we're trying to reach the other therapists that maybe could not come. So we're going to talk about mattresses and bed positioning. And before we get into that, I want to first acknowledge that we are gathered here on the traditional and unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And for that, we are very grateful. So today we're going to talk about a quick overview of pressure injuries. We're going to do some risk assessments, skin assessments, bed positioning to reduce risk, and support surface selection and product parameters. And then we're going to end with a case study, which I think you all got when you came in, which is going to help to guide some discussions with the vendors. So to start off with, what is a pressure injury? So it's skin damage caused by pressure. Pressure pushing down on one point, blocking off the blood flow, leading to cell damage. So typically it's going to be over bony prominences, but that's not to say that that's the only place you will see it. I just took my mask off, but I think when we were all first starting to wear masks, maybe you got some discomfort on the back of your ears. That was a pressure injury. So in long-term care, we use the Braden risk assessment. And that needs to be done within the first 24 hours of when a resident arrives. After that point, it will be done weekly for the first 3 weeks until the initial RI MDS. Then based on the overall score for the Braden, that will determine the ongoing frequency. So if they are at risk or moderate risk, it will only be done quarterly with the MDS. But if they are high risk or very high risk, then it will continue to be done weekly. So the frequency in which we do it is based on the overall score, but we really want to narrow down and focus on the different subscales. So sensory perception, mobility, activity, friction and shear, nutrition, and moisture. So mobility versus activity sound pretty similar. Does anybody know the difference of the two within the Braden? So activity is the degree of activity that we do. So are you getting out of bed to a wheelchair or to a regular chair? Are you able to mobilize? Whereas mobility is the ability to reposition. So can you reposition yourself, or do you need somebody else to reposition you? Now let's say you have a low score for mobility. What are some things that we would put in place right away? So some basic things that we would do is put them in a wheelchair so that they're getting up out of bed, put them in a tilting wheelchair so that we can change that position for them. We also might look at different mattress options, different positioning, make sure that they are on a repositioning schedule so that we're not keeping them in one position all the time. One thing that is not on the Braden is skin tone. So we wanted to highlight that this is a really important thing that is frequently missed. So historically as clinicians, we've been told to look for a red spot. These are all stage 1 pressure injuries. So the lighter skin tone, you can see a red spot. This is an Asian skin tone. You can see that there's something there, but it's still not quite as obvious as the lighter skin tone. Whereas the darker skin tone, I don't know about you guys, but I can't see anything. So with the darker skin tones, we want to make sure that we are feeling the skin. Because of that lack of blood circulation, the areas that are subject to higher pressure will feel cold and they will feel hard. Sometimes you will also notice changes in color, but it will typically be more of a blue or purple rather than red. So we want to make sure that when you are assessing the skin, use natural light whenever possible. And people with darker skin tones, because we don't identify it, they are at greater risk of developing the later stages of pressure injuries. So we want to treat them as being at higher risk, put the prevention in early so that we don't have to worry about healing after. Some other things that are also not on the gradient are cognition. So sometimes our residents need to be reminded to reposition. They might be able to, but they don't remember when or what they need to do, so we need to help them with that. Previous skin injuries. Even after a pressure injury has healed, it will only ever heal to 80% of its previous skin integrity. And spasticity and tone. That's another one that's not on there. So when we have residents with contractures, that's going to increase their risk. So how quickly can a pressure injury develop? 2 days, 2 hours, greater than 24 hours but less than 48, or 2 minutes? What do you think? Hi, group. Anybody?
Brenda says 2. 2 what?
Hours. Very good. There's a lot of twos on there. 2 hours, exactly. So that's why a lot of our repositioning schedules are based on the 2 hours. So it's also very important that we do daily skin checks. So quite often it's not going to be us, the therapists, that are doing the skin checks, but we need to make sure that we're encouraging the care staff and that we know the results of their daily skin checks. So we want to make sure that skin checks are done twice a day. And we want to have it first thing in the morning when they get up from the bed to the wheelchair, and then at the end of the day going from wheelchair to bed. And the reason that we do those two is to help narrow down where our concern is. So if it's first thing in the morning and you're noticing something new, that's going to tell us that the issue came from the bed. At the end of the day, if you're noticing something new, that tells us that the issue came from the wheelchair. So it just helps to narrow down where we need to target our interventions. So the main forces that are causing pressure injuries: pressure, which we've already talked about, so gravity pulling down; shearing. So I want you to all do a quick activity for me. You're all sitting. Take your hands. Find your ischial tuberosity. We've got some nice uncomfortable chairs for you too, so that should help. Okay, now I want you to rock back and forth. And you feel that is the shearing forces. So with that, the bones inside your body are moving against the tissues. So your skin stays in one spot, bones are moving, and so it's wearing down the connective tissues from the inside. And then we have moisture. And moisture will make everything worse. So when we have moisture, it will affect the outer layers of skin, which makes it so that the deeper layers are more susceptible to pressure and shear. The other thing about shearing is that it will double the impact of pressure. So we really need to make sure that we do everything that we can to reduce that movement. And friction is now considered part of shearing. So friction being the movement of two surfaces. So a common place that we find shearing is in bed, and when we're getting our residents up in bed. So the first thing that we want to do when we're going to sit somebody up in bed is we want to boost them up. And you don't necessarily want to boost them up to the very top of the bed. You want to look at where the bend point is in the bed and line that up with the hips, because that's our bend point. So you want that to be lined up. Then the next thing you're going to do is raise the foot of the bed and then the head of the bed. So that will create a block so they're not sliding. Lastly, you want to do a trunk release. Just looking forward and back, and that will prevent them from sticking to the mattress and again having those shearing forces. So when we're talking about pressure injuries, we also need to know about how they're measured. So with measuring pressure injuries, we're not the ones that are going to be doing the measuring. It'll typically be our nurse specialists in wound, ostomy, and continence care. Thank you. But it's important that we still know this so that we know how to read their documentation, how to communicate with the other care team, and also how to monitor changes. So measuring is done by looking at the shape, the length, the width, and the depth. With depth, you need to make sure that you're going to the deepest point. So in some cases, that can be through a tunnel. With that, that is called tunneling. And so tunneling will be a channel that is down, and it will be in one direction for each tunnel. It will go one direction. The next one is undermining. And so that is where the tissues recede underneath the skin. So you will end up with a bit of a shove. The thing with tunneling and undermining is the way that they're documented is based on a clock. So your head will be at 12 o'clock, your toes 6 o'clock. So in this case for tunneling, it is tunneling to 12 o'clock, and the undermining is to 6 o'clock. So for example, I'm just going to skip ahead in here. So, sorry. Let's say you have, so why do we care about the direction and all of that? We care because of shearing. So when we have the tunneling, that's telling us that there's a directional force, which is shearing. So if we have an elongated pressure injury that's on the sacrum, vertically, with tunneling to 12 o'clock, that will indicate, or it can indicate, that not guaranteed, but it can indicate that it is resulting from shearing from sliding in the bed. So that's why we want to know about tunneling. So that was sitting up in the bed. Now we're going to shift to if the bed is flat and how we do the positioning there. So this is how we would recommend you position somebody who either has a pressure injury or is at risk of a pressure injury. So you want to have them at a 30-degree angle using pillows to support. And what that does is it will distribute the weight. My experience in working in long-term care, we never had this many pillows available. So although this is lovely, it's not always realistic, and the pillows don't stay in place. They squish. They're not supporting the residents as well as we would like. So if you have somebody that you need to do all of this with, we would recommend actually getting different devices, some positioning devices to help support them. And the positioning devices will also improve comfort because it will provide better support. So what if your resident does not want to be repositioned? We don't want to give them the opportunity to say no. So we don't want to ask them, are you comfortable? Because if they are comfortable, why would they want to be repositioned? Instead, we need to focus on education. We need to educate the resident, and that education is likely going to be repeated frequently. So we want to say things like, it's time to be repositioned. Can I help get you up to the bathroom? Do you need a drink? We need to figure out why they don't want to be repositioned. So is it a matter of pain, comfort, or socialization? We need to look at the different occupations that they want to be doing and help make sure that they are able to still do those things within their repositioning schedule. So you can move the bed so that they can still watch TV or visit with a friend. If I'm going to be repositioning somebody and I'm going to look at the wall for the next 2 hours, I probably don't want to be repositioned. So that's what we want to do instead. Some people might still refuse to be repositioned. So as long as that's an informed choice, we've done that education. They're allowed to, but especially in those cases, we want to make sure that we do our support services.
Okay. Thank you. I have the power. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so has anyone seen this algorithm before? It's the BC
Social Support Service Selection Algorithm, and it was put together by the Interdisciplinary Skin and Wound Committee in 2020. Okay, you can access
the CLWK website, but it's on the resource sheet that we handed out to you too. This is a really great tool to help you decide if you need to use a more advanced surface support, okay? So just like Melissa said, repositioning is super important, but sometimes that's not enough. So this algorithm here is based on the subscales of the Braden scale. And for any subscale, so that would be nutrition, activity, mobility, skin moisture, continence, that kind of thing. If a resident scores 2 or lower on any subscale, that triggers your need to impart an intervention for that subscale. And that might be a fancy mattress, or it might be something different, but it means that you need to have an intervention in place. Okay? Now, the other thing that this algorithm considers is the number of intact turning surfaces. So has anyone heard that term before and know what that means? So an intact turning surface, when a person is lying in bed, they're either on their back supine, 30 degrees on one side, or 30 degrees on the other, right? An intact turning surface, those are the turning surfaces, those 3 positions, and the intactness means that skin on that surface is intact and there's no skin breakdown present, okay? So this algorithm considers the subscales on the Braden plus how many intact turning surfaces there are in place, and then that will guide you to some decision making. And as you can see, it doesn't tell you exactly which specific model of mattress you should be suggesting for your resident. Rather, it just suggests you should use a basic, moderate, or advanced support surface. And from there, you can consider all the different properties of the different support surfaces that you'll learn about in a moment, and then decide to do your trial and error to determine which mattress might be the best fit for your resident. Remember that any of these basic, moderate, or advanced surfaces do not replace the need to reposition. Okay, so just because you've got somebody on top of the line, super fancy air mattress, they still need to be turned Q2 hours or whatever that plan is for the care place. Yeah, you like that. Okay. Okay, so another thing, when you are considering, okay, I need to get a more advanced mattress for my resident, this cute little mnemonic that Melissa found, that is backed by evidence, helps you to remember all the different factors that you should be considering when it comes to choosing a mattress. And the mnemonic is mattress. Okay? So the first thing you might want to consider is microclimate and moisture. So are those issues heat, temperature, moisture, whether that be due to perspiration, incontinence, whatever that might be? And if so, you might want to consider a low air loss mattress to help manage the heat and the moisture. You'll want to consider their activity level. So some surfaces might limit the individual's ability to reposition or transfer independently. Sometimes you might need a more rigid foam border on the edges to promote independent transfers, but the activity level obviously is something you want to consider. The tissue tolerance. So this might include things like circulation issues, edema, contractures, nutrition, those types of things. And so individual factors for those residents might impact their tissue tolerance to pressure and their need for repositioning and what surface you select. Their total body weight, so I think we all know this, for really thin and bony skinny people, their bony prominences are going to be more prominent. Or for people who have high BMIs, that will mean increased stress on the tissues and therefore higher risk for skin breakdown as well. Repositioning needs, so we've talked a lot about repositioning, but also consider any limitations to what a resident's repositioning needs might be. So for example, are they on a continuous tube feed and they can't be positioned any lower than the head of the bed 30 degrees, and you might need to take that into consideration when you're choosing a mattress. Edema, so you might want to consider alternating air to help to manage edema management in terms of circulation and moisture control. Shear and friction, of course, you're going to want to think about properties that reduce sliding or have a smooth surface to reduce the risk of friction. Symptom management, this is more of a subjective thing, but also consider you want to promote the resident's comfort and help to manage their pain. Of course, existing pressure injuries, so how many intact turning surfaces do they have? And also, even like what Melissa said earlier, even if they have a previous injury, pressure injury, and it's been healed, it's only going to heal to maximum 80% of that skin's initial integrity to begin with. And then lastly, the sites. So you just want to be aware of what sites on the resident's body are going to be at risk of skin breakdown. And even if you have a low air loss mattress or a fancy mattress, you're still going to want to do a hand check to make sure that that resident is not bottoming out in all those areas of concern and in all the positions in which they will be lying on the bed. Questions? You guys okay? I'm trying to speed through this so you have enough time for the vendors. Row hose. We talk about this because row hose are in every single long-term care home on chairs and on beds. But to keep in mind that these are considered a moderate pressure relieving surface, and they are indicated for people who score 13, 14 on the gradient, okay? And for people who have 2 to 3 intact turning surfaces, and this is indicated by the Interdisciplinary Skin and Wound Committee, okay? This is considered a reactive mattress because the air distribution in each cell reacts to the weight and the force that is applied onto the cell side of the body, okay? And just keep in mind that the heels may fall between the cells, and that's often a source of pressure injury on heels, even though we say, oh, but they have a ROHO, okay? So sometimes with heels and a ROHO or any of these other mattresses, you might want to consider additional positioning devices to help offload those heels and keep them intact. We do recommend that inflation be checked 2 times a day, okay? Usually morning and evening. I know that doesn't sound super realistic, but it should be checked 2 times a day to make sure that there's no slow leak throughout the course of the day, and then full-on recalibration quarterly every 3-4 months or so. Okay, so lastly, in terms of advanced surface support, so if that algorithm that I just showed you a few seconds ago tells you, okay, you should go for an advanced support surface, these are all essentially your product parameters that you're going to want to consider for your mattress, okay? These are all characteristics of an advanced support surface, okay? So they're low air loss, active pulsation. I'm not going to go into too much detail because if you go onto the Click website, you can see the definitions of all of these things, but I highly recommend that you go through and ask all of our reps here for information on about what features each of these mattresses have, and then you can link them up to the products that we have. Okay? But the only thing we can't stress more is that do not replace repositioning. You still have to reposition the resident on these mattresses. Okay, so we got a case study, and you should have a handout, and if you don't have it, you can go over to that table over there and grab one. This is a real life story and very complex situation. And I'm not going to read it out because I'm just going to be wasting my breath. You guys can all read it out yourselves. But what we would like you to do is go through the different products and consider these questions. Okay, so here's a picture if you need a visual where all the wounds are. How many wounds are there altogether on this person? Like 4? 5? So as you go, but with also lots of complicating factors, contractures, she's very skinny and bony, she's older, she's got psychosis, and she's on a modified diet. So considering all of this and where the wounds are, as you're going through all the different tables, consider what mattress features might be appropriate for this resident, how frequently does she need to be repositioned, and what additional supports such as wedges, bolsters, etc. would you recommend for her? And where would you put her? Yeah? Okay. And we also just want to say thanks to everybody, all the great vendors who came out and came out to support us, and also some of the people who sent us samples that Melissa and I will show you all, but who couldn't physically be here today. Okay? Yeah. Do you have any questions so far before we break off? No? Great. Off you go. There's no flow, so just pick a table or pick some people and have fun. Thank you. Thank you. Good job.
So do we need to do this?
So you're gonna
Stephanie's
do
there.
your setup.
Hey?
Where is your setup for your
That thing.
that thing? So okay, we're gonna switch over to that. Very fast.
I'm sorry.
No, but it's okay. Still. No, it's a gift.
Okay.
No, it's meant to be compliment.
Okay. We're trying really hard because we started late. We started late, so I want you all to, I don't want to run out of time.
No,
Yeah.
you've been nice.
And I just drink a lot of coffee, so. See you guys.
Thanks for I'll see you.
See you tomorrow.
So right now. Position into it. So. Okay.
You just put it on top of the mattress that they're using?
Yeah, so you put it on top of the mattress, use it for repositioning.
Yeah.
The smaller sizes, we've also used as well for like when they're up in their wheelchair, if they have that contracture to put up there to help reduce that risk. So these are great. This is a brochure about it, so if you want more information, you can always go to the QR code there. So those are awesome. And then this is with heel option.
Like I wanted to just kind of like get out of it.
Yeah, so this one is really for somebody that is not able to move. They're going to stay in that position. You don't want them moving to the heels here or up here. So it is definitely for somebody not as well.
it's actually drawing air down, drawing moisture vapor down into the Skin IQ itself. Cool. And it's plugs into a small fan.
Yeah.
That's right there.
Very cool.
So you can put this on a non-powered mattress.
Yeah.
So if you have, just a non-powered mattress and then you need to control for moisture.
Yeah.
This is a great super patient use. Unless you rent it, and those ones are.
Is it, so it's for perspiration as well as like if someone's incontinent, like would that be?
Yes, and it will,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, obviously you're going to try to still limit, you're going to clean up every incontinence episode and use dry flow pads.
Yeah.
You can, there are air permeable soap pads essentially that you can use with a Skin IQ or low air loss.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a combination that still allows for the air to draw in the vapor.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then this is underneath. This is the Oralis.
Yeah.
And this is an alternating mattress system. It is smart set technology. You don't have to enter anything, no weights, no levels, nothing.
Can I see the cells?
Yes,
Is
of
it
course.
possible?
Yep, we can open them up for you. And find there's a few zippers because there's a few layers. Start here. It's the very bottom layer, right here.
Oh.
So this is a sub-layer. So this is actually a layer underneath the top cells.
What are the top cells?
I'm going to show you those are
okay,
in
so-
another compartment. Oh, there's a lot of zippers.
Yeah.
So here you can see the top cells for the ankle, and they alternate as well. So this is alternating right now. So they still alternate. You also have, these are elasticized to help offload the heel area. And in the body area, there's actually different
Sorry, can I ask why there's 2 layers?
So the bottom layer is actually a sub-layer that has tiny perforations in it, micro air loss, kind of like air loss. But it's not for keeping the skin cool and dry. It keeps the whole mattress cool.
Okay, so this doesn't alternate.
No.
Okay, just the top.
Just the top. And it prevents bottoming out. If you bottom out onto an air surface. So this is really meant to save time for people in long-term care who don't have time to muddle around with it. It will self-set. You can adjust the amount of air in the cells overall by going up or down, like that. It also has features like Instaflate, which will firm up all the cells for some procedures. And then you also have, so it's in alternating mode right now, but you also have constant low pressure mode if somebody doesn't like the sensation. Cool. Yeah. And then this is all treatment for pressure injuries. This is prevention. So this is the SEM scanner. So this is the OrthoSEM scanner, which will detect subepidermal moisture. So when we're talking about cell death, when you have the inflammation and just pointed out, you get moisture goes to the area, rushes to the area, fluid, and this can detect that. So we use this on any press record.
I did. It's on the other
And what
thing
it
where it
does is
says
it
where
tells
the
us
streaming
the
thing is.
biocapacitance. It tells us exactly if there's too much fluid underneath that skin under that component. It means that a pressure injury is already starting. This can tell you that 5 days before you would see it. Oh, interesting. So you could prevent entirely having pressure injuries at all. And then it's also great for monitoring when people come into your facility and say, okay, let's see, does this person have high sound or subepidermal moisture measurements? They're actually a delta of the different measurements you take. If somebody has a high delta, say in the ankles when they come from a hospital setting, then okay, they came with this. Now we're able to use these different things, implement different treatments, whether it's raising the heels, booties, this can help you make that decision objectively because it's an actual measurement. Okay. Yeah, super good. practice, people get so used to it, just put it in their back pocket. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I'm just curious, how does it work? How do you detect
How does it do it? Biocapacitance is it's the measurement of fluid subepidermally. So it's sending a signal down and receiving back a signal, and that tells it how much.
just to hold the handle and then touch the skin of the...
Sorry, can you say again?
So how do we use the machine?
So in your mornings when you're getting up and getting dressed, if you're doing those sorts of daily routines, that would be a good time to go in and scan the heel.
Oh, so just hold it,
Yep,
the
take
machine.
this. Yep, and I'll go,
And then
let's pretend that's your heel. You go like that. Go like that. And that way. It's 6 measurements. It's just those 2 bony prominences.
just heel and
Heel and sacrum. Yes.
sacrum.
Yes, that's right. Any questions?
They're new here.
Awesome.
It again.
Maybe I do it like a really quick summary of So, of this one or this one? Yeah. Okay, so this is the Arjo-Sun scanner brought to us by Green Biometrics. I have to say that too. But this detects subepidermal moisture.
Yeah, talk louder. Okay.
Hi everyone. So thankfully we have this thing here, which is called a Z-Flow Fluidized Positioner. So this is filled with gel, and there's some little tiny beads in there. When you need to reposition somebody, you're going to squish this, and then let's say they have a pressure injury. We're going to hollow out an area, and then we're going to position our resident. So as they're here, continue to push this in to provide support, and it will hold its shape. It is cool, so you don't have to worry about it heating up, lots of moisture there. It's also wipeable. So it's a very cool device that can be used for bed. It can also help in the wheelchair for contractions. You can put it here. Very cool device. We also have this one here. So this is from Care, and it's to help offload your heels. So this is going to be for somebody who is not able to move around a lot, so that contours will help keep the feet and elbows in position, or feet and heels in position. Very cool option.
And the other big difference with both of our with our company in general is, so our manufacturer makes all of their own parts in-house. Everything from the mold, from the casing, to all the small parts that go into it, they make everything in-house. So there's a high level of QA there. The only thing they don't make is the pump, which are imported from the United States over to Taiwan and then back to Canada. Those are by an American company called Amitech, and they're the leading pumps in the world. So very quiet pumps. They're also very durable and no maintenance. So in terms of maintenance, all you have to do is take this out about once every 6 months. You can rinse it under warm water and then you just pop it back in. That's the only maintenance that's required. And then if they're in a private home, you'll easily get 5-6 years without there being any need to do anything. If they're in a long-term care home or facility, they often get dropped They get ran over by the hospital bed, so things break. But we stock all of the spare parts in Surrey, British Columbia, and we can ship out to the care providers right away. So if it does get dropped and it's broken, they're pretty easy to fix. They're really designed to be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for many years at a time, which is quite unique in terms of a medical, even for a medical product. So,
I missed part of it.
yeah.
Would you mind repeating what is the auto detect feature?
Yeah, of course. So the main features, and you can come play around if you like. So the first thing you always have to do is hold the lock button. So you do that, and now you can control the unit. So auto detection is just pressing these two together, and now it's detecting the height and weight of the patient if there was a client on there, and it sets the pressure automatically for you.
It says so that, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So that was really a big breakthrough that our manufacturer made a number of years ago, and that feature is on both of these surfaces.
And then so after that, then you just lock it back?
It always locks automatically,
Oh, okay.
so you don't need to lock it back. It locks it itself so it doesn't get tampered with. So it'll bring you to what it thinks is the optimal pressure for the client. But you can make it, then the client might want a little more firm,
Yeah,
a little less
yeah.
firm.
So you can customize it?
And then you just use soft and firm to make changes once it's finished.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like auto detect. So then you can imagine your residence set. You can adjust it slightly. And then the only other thing you have to select is which mode you want. So there's 3 modes. Alternate is going to give you the best clinical benefit.
Of course.
That's when 1 in every
Yes.
3rd cell is alternating.
Yeah.
Pulsate is when all the cells reduce pressure by 30% before coming back up. And then constant low
So
pressure.
every 2 minutes, right? Just now.
Oh, sorry, that's gone to autoflow. Yeah, so you can select your cycle time. So if you're in Pulsate, for example, you can select your cycle time.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for all the modes, you can select
Okay,
cycle time.
okay.
Yeah, and then CLP, that's designed for residents that they can't stand the pressure
Right,
changes,
yeah.
or they're in palliative care, or they're hypersensitive.
Yeah.
So it just
Yes.
brings you to a static
And
surface.
is it the whole mattress is like that? Like, does it have any borders?
Oh, in terms of
I'm
which
just
ones
thinking of
alternate?
any of them.
So So one of the main complaints that residents could have is that they feel seasick or nauseous. So what we've done with this surface is the top 3, they remain always inflated. They don't alternate. So your pillow section is static,
Okay.
which we've got really good feedback for, and that's for both of our ones. The alternating pressure happens from here on. So right now, this one's down and this one's down. The other reason that patients can feel nauseous is with all of our competitor surfaces, you're being pushed in a little bit of a wave as the mattress goes through its cycle. You're being pushed, you're changing elevation slightly as it goes through the cycle. So what we've done is our cells fully inflate before the next segment of cells goes to alternating pressure. And what that does, it allows your resident to remain in a static position. They don't change height. So with the static section here and remaining at the same height, it's a very comfortable mattresses. Heel skin has a low profile of cells. So if you're lying, so it's slightly lower. To offload the heels a little.
Right.
And the other thing we've added is sometimes residents will say they feel cold if they're elderly and frail and it's the middle of winter. So what we've done to address that is we've added a valve here, and you can select a warm air mode. So in warm air mode, the cool air comes from the bottom, while the warm air comes through this valve, through the cover. And that brings up your temperature by around 3 or 4 degrees.
Interesting. So the cover closed air too.
If you're in the normal mode, cool mode, the cover wouldn't have air going
That's
through.
right, yeah.
Only if you select warm, it's pushing warm air through the cover to bring up that temperature a little bit and make it a little more comfortable. So it's a high mattress. It's a mattress replacement system, 10.5 inches high, and it's designed for stage 1 to 4 injuries. So clients with even stage 3, stage 4 bony prominences, there's a lot of room for offloading. The cell entirely deflates, so there's 8 inches here to offload. So these are our 2 most popular mattresses in our line.
Oh, So what's the difference? Sorry, I missed the lower cost one versus this one.
Of course. So this one is for stage 1 to stage 4 injuries. It's a high airflow rate. This one is for more high risk to stage 1 pressure injuries. It's a low airflow rate. So this is pushing out 8 liters of air per minute, and this is pushing out 1,000 liters of air per minute.
A lot, yeah.
So this is classified as a micro lower loss.
It's the same system.
Very similar.
Okay.
This is using a blower to generate that higher airflow rate,
Okay.
and this is more like a compressor.
Oh, okay.
So this is a much more cost-effective solution.
Yeah.
Some OTs will use this for higher stages, but we do say kind of high risk to stage 1. And because of the lower airflow rate, for patients that have moisture issues or incontinence, the higher powered system will give you much more ability to kind of dry and wick away moisture versus this one with a very low airflow rate.
I was just curious, is there like research or literature to support like, you know, the airflow amount? Like, is there like a point that is becoming therapeutic and below that is not quite, it's just preventative? Do you know if there's such numbers or guidelines?
A really definitive guide on that. But if just more anecdotally, if you were to lie on this one, for example, with the cover on top, the air flow is, you can't even really feel it. It's very subtle. So it's not going to be enough to make a major change. Whereas on this one, it's that 1,000 liters of air a minute. You can really feel the airflow. So I think if we do say moisture, incontinence, we want to have the higher airflow. And there's some mattresses that will be in between. There's low airflow or there's high airflow. We're looking at surface, it's going to be a medium airflow. It's going to have more cells. So if you think about if a mattress had 2 cells, it would probably be quite uncomfortable. So you'd really feel that alternation. When a mattress has more cells, it's more comfortable. So we're actually looking at a mattress that has 24 cells. And that could be really good for frail patients, for pediatrics, but ironically also for bariatrics, because there's more air cells to help offload. So
That one has more than this one?
Yeah, this is 18. This is 21.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So slightly more in the larger surface. On the other way. It's a really quick rundown.
I wear 2 hats. Yes, in community, I'm in the
minute, okay? Thank you.
Oh, now it's getting sunny. Still pouring.
It's springtime. It's springtime.
It's supposed to be summer in like 4 days.
Case study, I would go straight to them. If they can't tolerate themselves, they can't tolerate anything with respect to that, then I would go to one of these. When you're comfortable checking the time away with we're in a what if it's got? That's the big.
Yep.
That's okay.
Okay, and they're from the first one. Okay. By saying, I'm gonna take off my mask so you can hopefully hear me a bit better. Just wanted to start by saying thank you all for coming. Thank you to all the vendors for coming. I'm Melissa. I'm one of the BCH clinical resource therapists with the long-term care and assisted living professional practice team. No matter how many times I say that, I still...
It's written on the board. I'm Jill. I'm equal to Melissa, and you all know us. So.
Just wanted to also say we are trying to reach as many therapists as possible, so we are also on YouTube Live. Hopefully that's all working. We want to do the land acknowledgement. So we are gathered here on the traditional and unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and for that we are very grateful. So today we're going to talk about a basic overview of pressure injuries, risk assessments, skin assessments, bed positioning to reduce risk, support surface selection and your product parameters, and then we're going to end with a case study which will help focus discussions with the vendors. So to start off with, what is a pressure injury? So it's skin damage caused by pressure. So gravity pulling down, cutting off the blood flow to an area, which leads to cell damage. Typically over bony prominences, your sacrum, coccyx, shield tuberosities, but that's not to say that it only happens over bony prominences. So a risk assessment that we use for long-term care is the Braden. And that needs to be completed within the first 24 hours of admission. After that point, it will be done weekly up until 3 weeks when the initial RI-MBS is completed. After that point, it depends on the score. So if the overall score is at risk or a moderate risk, then it will get completed quarterly with the RI-MBS. If they are high or very high risk, this will continue to be done weekly. So although the frequency of completing this is based on the overall score, we really want to focus on the actual subscales. So sensory perception, mobility, activity, friction and shear, nutrition, and moisture. A subscale score of 2 or less means that we need to do something about it. So mobility and activity sound very similar. Does anybody know the difference in terms of the Braden? What is mobility? That is the ability to reposition. Can they reposition on their own? Do they need support? That's going to be your mobility. Activity is the actual degree of activity that we can do. So are they able to be up and mobilizing? Can they get up to a chair or a wheelchair? That's your activity. So if somebody has a low subscore for mobility, what are some interventions that we would put in place?
It's not a trick question. It sounds like it is. You do it every day.
Repositioning schedule?
Repositioning schedules, absolutely. Anything else? So we want to get them a wheelchair. So we want to have them get out of bed. If needed, we might look at getting a tilt wheelchair and changing that position throughout the day, having the repositioning schedule. All those little things, we can look at different support surfaces depending on what they're able to do. Something that's not included on the Braden is skin tone. So historically, we have all been told to look for red spots. These are all images of a stage 1 pressure injury. So in this one here, you can see a red spot. This is a lighter skin tone. This one here, you can see something, but it's not quite as clear. So that's an Asian skin tone. So compared to the lighter skin tone, there's something, but not quite as obvious. And then the dark skin tone, I don't see anything. So people with darker skin tones are at greater risk of developing later stages of pressure injuries simply because we don't see them. So we want to make sure that we treat them as being higher risk and put the prevention in early. The way that we can assess is by actually feeling the skin. So the areas of skin that are subject to higher pressure, because of that lack of circulation, will feel cold and they will feel hard. Sometimes you do get some discoloration, but it will look more blue or purple. So you still want to look for changes in the color. And the best way to see that is using natural light. So wherever possible, use the natural light. There's some other things that are not included in the Braden. So we've got cognition is one. So a lot of our residents, even if they're able to reposition, they don't remember when or how. So we want to make sure that we're helping and supporting them there. Having a previous pressure injury is another risk. So even after your pressure injury has healed, it will only heal to 80% of its previous skin integrity. So it's still going to be at greater risk of reopening. Spasticity and tone is another one. So when you have those contractures, it's going to put more force on the bony prominences. So how quickly can a pressure injury develop? 2 days, 2 hours, greater than 24 but less than 48, or 2 minutes? 2 hours, exactly. So when we think about our repositioning schedules, that's why there are 2 hours.
Because that's how long it takes to develop. We also need to make sure that we are doing daily skin checks.
So realistically, it's not going to be you as the therapist doing the skin checks, but we need to make sure that you are reinforcing to the care staff that it's happening, and you need to have that communication to know what they are finding. We want to encourage the full head-to-toe skin check twice a day. So once in the morning when they're getting up to their wheelchair, and once at the end of the day before going back to bed. And the reason that we have those 2 times is so that when they get up in the morning, if anything new is there, that tells us that it came from the bed. Likewise, when you get them back to bed, if you notice something new, that's going to tell us the issue is coming from their wheelchair. It helps to narrow down your focus of where you're looking. So the main forces that cause a pressure injury, we've already talked about pressure, gravity pulling down. The next one is shearing. So you're all sitting. I want you to take your hands,
Put them under, find your ischial tuberosity. Okay? Now, I want you to rock back and forth. You get those nice uncomfortable chairs help. So that's shearing. So the bones
rubbing against the connective tissue, your skin staying And so that shearing is breaking down the connective tissues from the inside out. And then we have moisture, and moisture will make everything worse. So affecting the outer layer of skin will make the susceptibility to shearing and pressure worse. The other thing is shearing will double the impact of pressure. So they all play together and make each other worse. Common place that we will see shearing is when you're positioning somebody in bed, especially with raising the head of the bed. So ways that we can reduce the risk of shear are to first boost them up in bed. You don't necessarily want to go all the way to the top of the bed. You want to look at where the bend point is in the bed and line that up with the hips, because that's where we bend. Then you want to raise the foot of the bed and then the head of the bed, and that will create a block, so reduce that shearing. Lastly, you want to do a trunk release. Forward and back, just to prevent them from sticking to the mattress. So that is positioning in bed with the head of the bed up. When we look at the skin, we need to look at how you measure the wounds. So measuring the wound is not something that we would do. That's up to the nurse specialists in wound, ostomy, and continence care. But we still need to know what's happening so that we can read their documentation, we can communicate with the rest of the care team, and we can help to monitor changes. So when we're looking at the wounds, you want to look at the shape, the length, the width, and the depth. With depth, you want to look at what the lowest point is. And so in some cases, that might be down a tunnel. So with tunneling, it will have a channel that will go in one direction. So you're going to look at that lowest point there. Undermining is when the tissues under the skin recede and you get that shelf there. So why is tunneling and undermining important? When we look at them, we look at the direction in which they are tunneling for undermining. So the head is going to be, considering the clock, 12 o'clock. Your feet, 6 o'clock. So in this example with tunneling, it is tunneling to 12 o'clock. The undermining is to 6 o'clock. The reason that we care about that direction is that it implies that shearing is taking place. So shearing has that directional movement. That's why we care about this. So for example, let's say we have an elongated wound on the sacrum vertically, and tunneling is to 12 o'clock. That might tell us that the issue is from shearing from sliding in the bed. These are now images for how we would recommend you position somebody if they're flat in the bed. So we're going to use pillows in this case, and you want to have them positioned at a 30-degree angle, not right up on their side. The 30 degrees helps to distribute the pressure and doesn't put them onto other bony prominences. This is great, but I never found this many pillows when I was working in long-term care. So if you have somebody who is at risk or has pressure injuries and you need to do something like this, we would really recommend getting some positioning devices. So the positioning devices will hold their shape better. Because they're going to hold their shape better, they will also provide more comfort for the resident. So what if the resident does not want to be repositioned? So we want to avoid asking them questions where they can say no. So you don't want to say, are you comfortable? Because if they say, yes, I'm comfortable, why do I want to be repositioned? So you want to change the way that we ask the questions to, it's time to be repositioned. Can I help get you a drink, get you up to the bathroom. We need to focus on the education for the resident so they understand why they're being repositioned. That education is going to happen regularly, frequently, just making sure that every time we are reinforcing that. We need to also look at why they're saying they don't want to be repositioned. Is it pain? Is it comfort? Is it socialization? We need to deal with that so that when we are repositioning them, we're still enabling them to do their occupation that they want to do, even though they're being repositioned. So I'm not going to reposition so I'm looking at the wall for the next 2 hours, because then no, I don't want to be repositioned. But maybe move the bed so I can still watch the TV or visit with my friend. Look at what they need to do and work that into your repositioning schedule. Some people might still say, I do not want to be repositioned. In that case, we need to make sure that they are making an informed decision. So all those education pieces have been in place, and if that's the case, we need to make sure that we are looking at the different support surface options.
Thank you. Okay, so repositioning is key, but sometimes it's not enough. So has anyone seen this algorithm before, BC Provincial Support Surface Selection Algorithm? You can find it, it's in your resource on your handout. It's on the CLWK website. This was developed in 2020 by the Interdisciplinary Skin and Wound Committee, and it's a handy little tool using the Braden subscores to help you decide what degree of support surface might be beneficial for your resident, okay? So it looks at two different things. It looks at the subscales of the Braden. So just like what Melissa said earlier, if a resident scores 2 or less on any subscale, it means you need to enact some sort of intervention for managing that subscale. So that would be, again, mobility, activity, nutrition, continence, moisture, those types of things. It doesn't mean it's going to jump straight to getting a specialty mattress. It just means you need to have some sort of intervention in place to address that low score. The other thing that this algorithm considers in mattress selection is the number of intact turning surfaces. So does anybody know what that means, or have you heard that term before? So an intact turning surface, a turning surface, for example, is when a person, any of us, are lying in bed. You're typically either, in long-term care at least, you're typically either supine, lying on your left side, or lying on your right side. Rarely do we see people sleeping on their stomach in long-term care. And so those would be the turning surfaces. And then we need to consider, of those turning surfaces for that resident, is the skin intact? And then once you consider the number of intact turning surfaces, plus the different subscales of the Braden, you plug that all in, follow this algorithm, and it will help you to determine what degree of support surface you might need. It doesn't tell you specifically what model of mattress you should choose, but it tells you whether or not the resident might need a basic, moderate, or advanced mattress. And then you can consider other factors that we will discuss next to help you choose more specifically which mattress you need. So this is a really handy tool, and you can get it off the Click website. So when you are considering what type of mattress you want to make sure you've considered all the different factors that are in play with mattress selection. And so we found this handy little mnemonic called mattress to help you decide what mattress to pick. Okay? So the M of mattress stands for microclimate and moisture. So here you might want to consider a low air loss mattress to help manage the microclimate. A is for activity levels. So some surfaces might limit the individual's ability to reposition or transfer themselves, and you'll want to consider that in the type of mattress that you choose. Maybe you want something with a little bit more of a firm surface. Maybe you want something with borders around the edge to help promote independent transfers. T for tissue tolerance. So you might want to think about that resident's specific factors that might impact their tissue tolerance. Do they have circulation issues, contractures, What else? Nutritional needs, that type of thing that might impact the tissue's ability to withstand pressure, moisture, all the different things, shearing and friction. Body weight, so it's pretty self-explanatory. Somebody who's really thin and bony, their bony prominences are going to be more prominent than somebody who's not. And then the reverse effect is if somebody has a really high BMI, their higher weight is going to put more stress and strain on the tissues and put that person at higher risk of skin breakdown. Repositioning needs. So consider that resident's ability to reposition, but also any limitations to their ability to reposition. So for example, some people might be on a continuous tube feed and they can't go any lower than 30 degrees of the head of the bed for that reason. And that's something you might want to consider when you're doing a surface selection. Edema, so something like alternating air can help with edema management and moisture management. Of course, shear and friction, you'll want something to reduce sliding or might have a smoother surface or a more of a creative surface to help managing shear and friction. Symptom management is a little bit more subjective, but you always want to pick something that promotes comfort and reduces pain. Existing pressure injuries, again, you want to consider those intact turning surfaces. Where are the current wounds? And also you want to consider where the old wounds are. So if a person had previous wounds, they're now healed. Remember that those are really high chance of reopening again because that tissue is only 80% as good as its original state. And lastly, the sites. So of course you want to consider on the person's body what sites and what areas of the body are at highest risk of skin breakdown. So Roho mattress, we're going to talk about this. This counts as like a moderate pressure relieving mattress. Other types of moderate pressure relieving mattresses might be something like you'll explore Alex's Blake over there. That would also be considered a moderate pressure relief, okay? But we like to talk about Rohos because you see them everywhere, on wheelchairs, on beds, in all of long-term care. So this would be indicated for somebody who scores 13, 14 unabraided, okay? And or for people who have already a pressure injury, but they still have 2 to 3 intact turning surfaces. Okay? There's no weight limit, and this would be considered a reactive mattress because the air cells react to the force that is applied on the body, and then the air is redistributed throughout. Okay? One thing to note is that heels might fall between the cells of a Roho, and so just because you have a Roho but the resident has skin breakdown on their heels, you might want to consider additional positioning devices to help offload those heels, because that is one indication of Rohos. And another indication is, of course, if somebody has like unstable spinal fractures, you probably don't want them on some sort of unstable mattress as well. You want something a little bit more firm. When we talk about basic, moderate, or advanced support surfaces, we can't stress enough that the fancy mattress, whatever you end up choosing, it does not replace the need to reposition the resident, okay? So even if you get some top-of-the-line mattress, they still need to be repositioned according to the care plan, including those mattresses say that they self-turn, okay? Those they still need to be repositioned physically, okay? Any questions so far? You guys are all writing. This is studious. The first group. Okay, so in the algorithm that I showed you earlier, it talked about advanced support surfaces as something you might want to consider for your resident. These are all different characteristics of all the different types of advanced support surfaces you're going to see here today and others that are out there in the world, okay? And these are the types of, these are basically product parameters that you're going to want to communicate with your vendors when you're trying to choose the right mattress. You are not expected to be experts in the product, that's what everybody else here is for, but you are expected to be experts in your resident and know what that resident needs. And then just translate all that information to your vendor who will be able to suggest the best product for those things. Remember that there is no final right or wrong answer for any situation, and it often does take a little bit of trial and error. But it is important to know what all the different features that are possible in an advanced support surface so that you know
what your options are. I'm not going to go into detail about the definition of each and every one of these things, but in that Click website, below the algorithm, it explains to you what each of these characteristics are if you need it. Once again, you still need to reposition people. It doesn't replace repositioning. All right. So we're going to move on into a case study, and it's a very complex situation. This resident is 89, she's got complex medical needs, and I think we said there's 5 wounds altogether, right? 2 bilateral heels. Bilateral heels, yeah, okay. So in addition to lots and lots of complex positioning needs. And then below on your handout, it also has the subscales for this resident on the rating. As you go through the different vendors and exploring all the different products today, I want you to keep this case study in mind, just so that you have a way to focus your learning on and bring it back to either this case study or a resident that you have right now on your caseload that you are working with, okay? But the types, there's a picture of where all the wounds are, if you want to see. And the types of questions that we'd like you to consider as you're exploring all the products are, what mattress features might be appropriate for this resident? How frequently do you expect she needs to be repositioned? And what additional supports, such as wedges or bolsters, would you recommend, and where would you place them? Okay. And we just wanted to say thanks to the vendors who came out today, in the rain, in the sun, in the wind, and the everything, and for bringing out all your products and coming out. It was so fun and nice to see everybody in person again and do this virtually and in real life. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, off you go, pick a spot. There's no flow or anything to it, and Melissa and I will be around to answer any questions.
Thing does. You put it on the bed surface, so you can put it on the mattress, and you can velcro it to the side of the bed. And they were talking about the client being in prone position, and they had them at 30, but then they had them at 30 degrees. So you could position this so the client would be reminded not to go over closer to the wound or back on the back, and then to support them you can add one of the universal cushions, and then the nice thing is you can put the sheet right over it, so then you have the all the positioning pieces and the sheet is over and the client lies on the sheet as normal. The good thing is that depending on the situation you can move this in or closer or further back. We also have an anti-fall system that's similar to this that works on the whole mattress. So the sheet attaches underneath the bed with clips, and then you have the larger wedges to keep them from falling. Now for the positioning of the client, I have the pictures here of the case study, and you'll see that again, using the abductor cushion for the knees, this would work and stay in place. For her hand, the best thing would be to put it underneath the arm, and so it wouldn't be right on, and it would lift it from the pressure on the hand. For the heel, you can place the heel so that it's raised up, and then the cushion just molds to the leg of the client. So then that would take care of the pressure injuries there. The other thing she was talking about was when the client is in supine position and then you want the knees to be raised up, you can put the cylinder cushion under the knees, and that will prevent them from sliding. So you get a lot of flexibility with the microbead positioning. You can also get a head and shoulder position cushion. So it works very nicely for them. You can leave it open or you can snap it. And it works great for them to position themselves both in the bed and in the chair. And then if you're using it for multi-use, say you want it for many clients, now all the fabric meets California standards 117, similar to our wheelchair cushions. So it meets all the regular standards and fire retardancy. And if you're using it for multi-use, or as this client with incontinence, you might want to buy a second incontinent cover. So wipe both of these off with a disinfectant. And then if the client is using it on a regular basis, you might want to have the bamboo cover, which is nice fabric, and then you can have it on top of the sheet. And then this would be next to the client, so the fabric would be nice. And it's a really nice gift. Lots of times families want to buy something for their loved ones, and they don't know what to buy, and this would be a nice gift as a cover. Yes, it is. It's washable. And I washed this one, and it came up nice and soft. Then the other thing that I brought was the Resolve cushion. And the reason is, they mentioned that the client was in a rojo, but that she got fatigued when she was up in the chair, in the tilt chair. So this is a positioning cushion, gives good pressure redistribution and excellent immersion development, but it has the rojo insert in the back. So the positioning would help the client be less fatigued, and they might be able to stay up longer. We have really good success with this cushion because of the great positioning. And you can have it with or without the pummel. It comes with a removable pummel and the Velcro's on, so you stick it in. And then it's a regular rojo with the rojo warranty. And with the rojo, without. With the rojo is $11.15. Comes with a full rojo, and you get to choose whether it's single or bilateral. And you can choose 3 or 4 inch cells. The valve is on the side, so you can easily inflate the cushion. So as they were mentioning, they want to inflate it on a regular basis and test it. So that works extremely well. It's aluminum in the positioning and then foam over the aluminum. You can also get it without rojo, and it's called a regular Resolve. It started as a custom cushion, the Fusion, and then so many therapists in BC wanted it to be off the shelf. So they worked with us, and we have several models that are off the shelf. And it's right in the order form. Also, if you fill in the information little card, we're going to do a draw for one of the centers, and we'll give an eval cushion to the center.
And then if you guys are wanting to trial any of these, come through HB.
Yes, Nicole's from
And we will bring them out and trial like this equipment as well as
and they do a lot of the Resolve cushions. They've had great success with that. You're welcome to sit in it. It's not easy on this chair because of the angle. And then we have
You feel dizzy? Yeah. Well, it's too small for me.
It's hard in that it's not flat, but put it closer to your 18. Okay.
Apparently, I'm not that
You can also get it without. You can also get it without the rear pelvic support, and it's a lesser amount.
You apparently love
What is the purpose of the Oh, where they sit in a size that, say you were an 18, or maybe a 17 would be fine. Yeah, you can do 17?
Yeah.
So does that fit you, the 16?
To have the support. Yes, I'm 16. Yeah.
You like that?
Right now it's good, but maybe if I keep using that for a longer term, it might be a little bit tight.
You just tried to tell me you were 16.
Yes, I don't think, yes, I'm not 16 anymore.
That's true.
Both sides too, right?
And we do the tilt and the
So what's trying?
Does it come in different? Yes, all the. This is 16. It's just the chair is not a good chair for sitting, but.
Yeah, so it's really cool because they come out to stuff like this. There's no very few other options.
And I think we can, our unique circle that we have our
Yeah, that's what's coming on the Met program because they know that they know the products around will support the products. And that kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a local manufacturer. Set up questions, compliance questions, anything. Let me know. Take my card. And I'm glad to help you through. I know you've got the history of people and vendors working out there, but any specific product-related questions for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. What about, okay, so then as far as anything else that's kind of ministry related, actually maybe tell me the difference when someone would have like the smaller column versus the...
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
I can show you that. So this is what we're famous for. We're a gel company, and as you see on the card, I'm a gel enthusiast.
Right.
We make this stuff.
Right.
Okay. This is geomatrix gel. It's a solid gel. Because it's a solid gel, I can engineer shapes. And when I say smarter people back we can engineer shapes into it. We can make shapes into it.
Yeah.
Essentially we've got three different products. This is the pillow top. This is our cushion gel. And then this is our mattress gel. And the difference being it's 1.5 inches tall over 1 inch tall. So we just have more stuff to immerse into. And how it works is we apply pressure, and let's say that these are my ITs. As we apply pressure, the columns collapse.
Yeah.
We share that with the neighboring cells and columns. And that's how we manage the peak pressure points. And then with the columns and movement underneath, we get that shear reduction of lateral movements or an oscillating propulsion in a wheelchair cushion right now, right? So we get that shear reduction that we've got movement on the materials and not our bone moving on a solid surface. So with that undermining is gonna we're eliminating that factor. So with that in mind, those three products, where would we kind of tell you where you're going to use it, to be honest. Top dressing on a lot of our wheelchair cushions. We use the inch tall stuff, soft, medium, and firm. And if you actually give them a squeeze, you can tell the different densities of this. So we'll layer these up for different weight capacities of the cushion.
Oh, okay.
So these would be higher risk people who don't need as much positioning, shape, contouring within a wheelchair cushion. And then the sort of stuff in mattresses, just because we have that more immersion, so we have that 1.5 inches, we get more immersion into it. That's kind of how things work. Looking at this going, okay, why have I got this stuff in the heel section down here? That mattress gel is 1.5 inches.
Yeah.
Foam is less expensive than gel. If I was to run that gel all the way through, it would just make a more expensive mattress.
Right.
And we were trying to keep to a certain price point from previous generations without raising things too much. So that's why we did the memory foam. This actually is changing, a different foam. This is changing. But we essentially a memory foam and a pillow top gel. They'll pressure map exactly, they do pressure map exactly the same. but it's just cheaper for us to use foam than it is gel all the way.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you based?
Well, I'm in a regional, so I'm actually the equivalent of Jill. I'm a clinical resource therapist.
Yeah.
So I'm regional, so I do all of Vancouver coastal.
Oh, for coastal. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I do it for everyone. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and my portfolio is home health and long-term care. So I do the owned and operated sites like George Pearson, Banfield. The private ones.
Private ones.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're operating the coastal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, yeah, so it's like providing support and education to the therapists.
Right. Yeah. For sure.
So I just got a call last week.
So with that in mind,
You may not know. So we went into actually a long-term care facility where we did scanning in the morning after getting dressed, and they were found ambulatory people actually had elevated sensors. How is that possible? Ambulatory people have elevated sensors. It was the mattresses. They didn't have mattresses that had a 10-degree heel slope. So every night the person was going to bed, the mattress was an issue. But it's a great way to help detect all of those things before you can actually see with the naked eye. If that makes sense. And it's a little disposable sensor head. Goes on, clicks onto there, and then again you're just going to do 4 spots on the ankle, and then 6 spots on the seat.
And why is it just the ankle and the sacrum?
Because those are the areas where the bony prominences exist, where the skin can actually experience that cell death because of compression.
Can't try it anywhere else.
You can't. It hasn't been validated for that. It's only for those bony prominences.
Okay.
Yeah, but it nicely fits into either your morning routine getting dressed or your bathing routine during the week. Usually about twice a day is what I'm in long-term care. And that's, you rent a scanner essentially and then you buy the sensor heads.
Very cool.
How much does something like that cost?
So it's going to be different because it's the newest, it's new in the market. We have never sold that category.
Okay.
So it's being established, but this for rent in a long-term care facility. We're thinking rental might be best. This is about $400 a month to rent.
400 a month?
$400 a month.
Okay.
The sensor heads are about $17 each. So they are sold in cases of 200.
And they're one-time use disposable, or are they? Can we dedicate one to one resident?
No, one-time use.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Same person,
Okay.
same time.
Okay.
Any questions?
This would be so good for also for people who are independent. I'm thinking like spinal cord injuries. You know, like who are independent, who really want to monitor and take control over their own. They can't see their sacrum. They can't feel their sacrum or something like that. You know. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if they have the ability to do so, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I've never thought I'm gonna have to go home tonight. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many ways that we're gonna see this because it's taking a wrong stance. We've been treating it for so long. Why don't we prevent it before the happens?
Yeah. It's great. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Yeah.
unmute and just kind of see the can't play music. Good? Do you think that's good? You're gonna say this with this, and then I'm gonna say thank you. Do we wanna continue to live stream or?
I think that you captured it all, right?
Yeah, we're just now going to say thank you to sponsors and stuff. Wait. No, hold on. This. And then this thank you. What's going on? I'm just saying thank you. That's okay. That's just that's what they'll see.
Did you see, so was anybody actually